Okay, here we are. We're live.
Good.
You've got Mel with Dr. Miriam Freedman. Hi, Miriam.
Hi, Mel. Nice to see you.
Where are you calling from?
I am in Palo Alto. It is 6 in the morning.
So,
And but while we're here, it'll start getting lighter.
okay, and I'm here in near Tel Aviv, where it's soon going to be night.
It's
Is-
amazing. It's
Isn't the
really
world a wonderful place? It's so great to meet you. This is the first time we're actually meeting and talking. We always
yes.
start the show off with a jingle. I
Great.
mean, shows have to start with a jingle, right?
Absolutely.
So we'll do the jingle. And then we're going to talk about your life and about education. Here we go.
Absolutely.
Get a chair, grab a seat, or we'll sweep you off your feet. We move, we groove. You get a chair, grab a seat, or we'll sweep you off your feet. We move, we groove. You got Mel. Ease your legs, rest a while. All you gotta do is smile. We're swell, can't you tell? You got Mel. When the show begins, you better hold on real tight, or before you know it, you'll be high as a kite. Take a break, settle down. We're the only show in town. SRO, don't you know? You got Mel. Give it up, don't think twice. We're a hurricane on ice. What the hell? Give a yell, ring your bell, show and tell. Mademoiselle, give a smell. You got Mel.
You've got Mel. And Mel
So
has,
funny because it's so funny because I like to watch old movies, and I just finished watching again. You've Got Mail. So anyway, it's very cute. Very cute. Life
you
is,
know,
it's a
Miriam,
synergy here.
the youngsters don't get it though.
What?
They've grown up in the post You've Got Mail era.
Yeah, yeah. Which is
Anyway,
amazing. Yeah.
it is amazing. So wonderful to have you on the show. And I want to thank Guido van Nispen for bringing us together and all the other wonderful people that we were talking with on the future of education. Mark and Kurt. And so why don't you start at the beginning and tell us all about your life, and I'll hardly interrupt you.
Me, oh my goodness. Okay. Well, believe it or not, I was born not very far away from where you are right now, 100 years ago when it was still Palestine. I was born in Afula, and I lived in Kfar Yehoshua on a farm with my parents and my little brother and my cousins and all of that. Um, it was a very hard life, but anyway, we did it. I remember Shavuot, that's about it. I mean, I remember beautiful Shavuot festivals with all the vegetables and fruit and flowers and so on. Unfortunately, my father died when he was a very young man, and my mother, my brother, and I made the journey. So we left Israel. By then it was Israel. We took the boat to Marseille in France, took the train to Holland. She was Dutch. For the US quota as immigrants. We waited for USA or Australia, whichever would come first, and that's where we'd go. And the USA came about 2 weeks before Australia. So we got on a boat in Rotterdam, across the Atlantic, and landed in Hoboken, New Jersey.
So
Yeah.
one second, Miriam,
Yeah.
how old were you when you made this trip?
I was about 10. Yeah,
So your father died when you were about 10?
7.
When you were 7? Oh, no.
Yeah, very sad. Very, very sad. It was really, I mean, I don't want to go over that life, but it was a very hard life. Let me just say that. And I knew that things were
And
going to get
okay,
better.
your parents, where did they grow up?
Oh, my parents, my mother was from Holland, The Hague, and my father was from Germany, Berlin. And they met in Israel. He came because of the rise of Hitler, and she came chasing somebody else.
So,
Anyway, whatever. So that's their story. Um,
so you ended up in Hoboken. I like to say New Jersey, but everybody corrects me.
exactly. Yeah. And I mean, I knew things were going to get better right away because my two aunts from my father's side met us on the dock, And my Aunt Miriam, I'm not named after her, but it's just interesting. She gave me bazooka bubble gum. Do you remember bazooka bubble gum?
Sure.
It's pink. It's got a joke around it in paper and you chew it. Well, my mother had never let us chew gum, of course. She was European. And I could just feel the sense of freedom, actually, that I would have gum in the United States. So she found it, real quick. She found a job as a housekeeper, believe it or not, in Princeton, New Jersey, the height of luxury. And my brother and I went to the public schools in Lawrenceville, New Jersey, which is near Princeton. And then she advertised in the newspaper for a husband. And we moved in with my stepfather within a year of coming to America. So
Hold on.
Yeah.
Time out.
Yeah.
Advertised in the newspapers in the 1950s.
Yes. I mean, this is pre-Match.com. She was a Match.com pioneer. And she was very good at target marketing because she advertised in a newspaper that was specifically geared to European Jews, the German Jews. It was called the Aufbau, the arrival or the outgoing, the Aufbau. It's no longer in existence. So she advertised there. I have the ad. It's very charming. Anyway, I don't need to talk about my mother, but that's my story. I'm sorry?
Share the ad sometime.
I would love
to see the ad.
Okay, I will. Yeah, it's charming.
So then suddenly you had a new life in America.
Yeah.
And
in Fleming.
And then your stepfather.
Yeah. And he was also an ex-Berlin banker. My own father was an ex-Berlin lawyer, and I became a lawyer following in his footsteps. Stepfather was a very fancy banker from Berlin, but chicken farmer. When we knew him, we had a little chicken farm on the last house on the street in town in Flemington. If any of your audience has ever been to Flemington, they know where I was.
You had a farm on a street in Flemington.
Yeah, it's now a park, actually. They buildings, the chicken coops down, but it's a beautiful park. They didn't develop it. So then I went to school and, my love of public education, I think, started there, honestly. My fifth grade teacher was Mrs. Bell by the time I got to New Jersey, to Flemington. And she was fantastic, and my cousin ended up living with us. So we both were in fifth grade. And we learned English. We learned all the states of the United States. We learned all the capitals, and life went on. And I loved high school, and then I went to college at Columbia Barnard, the women's part of Columbia.
So hold on. By the time you got to America,
yeah.
I mean, as a baby, you spoke what? Dutch?
Oh yeah, that's
Hebrew,
interesting.
Yiddish, what?
No, I spoke perfect Hebrew.
Wow.
No Yiddish. My parents were Western European, so they didn't speak Yiddish. There's a whole split there. I don't need to tell you, but
so do you remember any of your Hebrew?
That's the problem. My mother was of that generation where whenever you would go to a new place, you wiped out the old and you started the new language. So I spoke Hebrew in Israel. I spoke perfect Dutch in Holland, and I speak, as you can see, English now. And I'm afraid that I really don't remember Hebrew or Dutch. It's hard to keep a language going if you don't keep it going.
Wow. So you went to study law.
Well, then I went to study to be a teacher.
Really? Before you decided to be a lawyer?
Oh, yeah. I was a teacher on and off for, I don't know, around 8 or 10 years. There's an interesting story with that. Again, I went to college in New York City, and I wanted to teach in New York City because in those days, we all wanted to make a difference, and we were very idealistic, 60s. And wouldn't you know it, I failed the New York City speech test, which you had to take. In those days, it is totally discriminatory, but in those days, you had to take it to teach in the city. and I guess they didn't like my accent.
A speech test, and they tested your accent?
Yep, very. It took about 30 seconds, and then I'll never forget this guy at the end of the classroom saying to me, "You fail." Well, I was a good girl, and I'd never failed anything. It was horrible. So I just sat there and cried. I mean, I stood there and cried for a while, and then I said, "To heck with this, I'm leaving." And so I never went to my Barnard College graduation ceremony. I got on the train and all the way to Oakland, California, where I got off. I had somebody I knew in Berkeley. I found an apartment and I got a teaching job. And of course, the irony is that everyone who met me because of my accent thought I was from New York.
That's hilarious. Like New York accent, a
I
big
know.
deal, New York accent.
And they would not take me as a teacher. And I was certified to be a French teacher. My French was pretty good at the time. Again, I don't speak French. Oh my goodness.
You
So
could be speaking a dozen languages,
I could, well, yeah. My mother spoke five.
I
You know,
have
she,
one more question. Before you got on the train to go to Oakland,
yeah.
first two questions. Did you write an advertisement?
No.
And did you go to Woodstock?
No, I did not. That's so cute. No, I
You were
didn't.
the hippie.
No, I didn't. But I did meet my husband the following year in Berkeley, but not through an
No,
advertisement.
but were you a hippie?
I was in Berkeley. You know what? I don't think I was a hippie. The only demonstration that I remember being part of was something in Sacramento for teachers. I was not a hippie, no. But it was very hard not, I mean, we were all hippies, I guess you would say. We would go to these concerts and outdoors and, a lot of tattoos and all that. I mean, it was very hard not to get involved in that era. It was a wonderful time to be in Berkeley.
Do you remember any of the bands that you went to see?
I don't know, but I mean, the Jefferson Airplane.
Oh, Grace Slick.
Yeah, I think yeah. Anyway, it was great. It was a wonderful time to be in.
And then you
Berkeley.
met your husband.
We did, yeah. And and then we moved back east. Actually, he's a professor, and so we kind of followed the academic route, and went to Princeton for 1 year, and then we ended up at Stony Brook, Long Island, starting a really excellent physics department, and we were there for many years. My daughter was born there. My son was born on a sabbatical when we were in Pasadena at Caltech.
Okay, so your husband was in the physics department at Stony Brook?
At Stony Brook, and then we moved to MIT. And he's now at Stanford as a visiting, old guy.
In my past, I lectured at Stony Brook and at MIT.
Oh, really? Yeah. Well, Stony
That was
Brook,
many years ago.
interesting. What is your field?
Oh, this is about you, Miriam.
Okay, all right.
If you want to
So
interview
anyway, the guy who
if you want to interview
the guy
me,
who
you
was
have to set up
starting,
your own show, you have to set up
Yeah.
your own jingle, and then I'll come and be on your show.
all right, that would be fun. Next time. Okay, so the guy who was setting up the program at Stony Brook, I mean, they built it around him, was a Nobel Prize winner called Frank Yang. You may know that name. And it's wonderful to us. I mean, everything, my memory of that place was terrific. So
It's a great place.
many friends in Stony Brook and MIT, and we came out here about, 8 years ago. So that's my story. And I went to law school. Oh, this is interesting. So I went to law school on a sabbatical from Stony Brook to Pasadena. The year when my son was born, when I started law school, I was 8 months pregnant, if you can believe that. And so I went to USC for 1 year. He was born, we did great. And then I transferred to NYU, and that's where I graduated from law school, New York. So if you look at my resume, you think I've done everything in New York, but not quite so.
So
And,
you became a teacher and then a lawyer?
I became a teacher and then a lawyer, but my passion always was for public education. And what's interesting, I graduated from law school in 1980. The special ed law had been passed in 1975. By the time the Congress, I'm sorry, the Department of Education made the regulations, it was around 1978. And so states were hiring people to implement that law. And one of the main jobs for that would be to be a hearing officer, which is like a administrative law judge. And that's what I became for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And I did that for 8 years. I really was, I've watched this law rise and what I would say now, get out of control. I'm kind of involved in reforming special ed, but at the very beginning, it was extremely inspiring. It was interesting because people were exploring how to handle this new law that provided appropriate services for all children with disabilities. Anyway, so I did that. And then as I was practicing, as I was a hearing officer, cases all over this, all over the state. And one of them was on Cape Cod in Barnstable, which is Hyannis, which is where the Kennedy compound is, that area. And sure enough, the lawyer for the public school was a really wonderful guy, Bob. I was getting ready to leave being a hearing officer. I didn't want to work for the state any longer. And I hounded him for about a year. He was an assistant superintendent somewhere and at night law school. He was kind of doing the same thing I was doing, going from education to law. So he was part of a law firm already, and I hounded him for a year until he gave me a job. And so I'm still affiliated with that law firm. I started there in 1988. And what they call of counsel, which means I just do seminars when I come back east. And with the COVID, I haven't been east for a round of seminars in the spring and in the fall. So
Miriam, if I understand, you're an expert like when families sue the government,
right,
because their child has not been appropriately dealt with in the school system. Is that
right,
your expertise?
right. But I represent the public school.
Yeah.
I represent the people who listen to the, if you will, and either decide to figure out something. Most of our, like 96% of our cases resolve themselves. So I help the public school compromise, if you will, or whatever. And if they say, no, this is not right, it's not good for the child, or we shouldn't do it, or it sets a bad precedent, whatever their argument is, then I would take them to a hearing and represent them. And we would come out with a decision by somebody like what I used to do when I was a hearing officer.
Okay, so I want to move on now to your thoughts about education.
Yeah.
Everybody, like education sucks, public education.
Yeah.
And we spend most of our time blaming the public education system and the government. But is that where the blame should be placed?
Well, that's a huge question. Education doesn't suck everywhere, number one. Okay, so let's be really clear. A lot of kids get a very good education in the public schools. Let's be honest about that. But the ones who get a good education come to school prepared. And so the part that I cannot get out of my mind, actually, why our schools are not doing well is that some children come to school, to kindergarten, prepared, meaning they know how to sit in a chair, they know how to behave themselves, they know how to make friends, and they have pretty good language skills. They know how to talk, they have a good vocabulary, and some kids don't. And there was an amazing study, I think 1995 perhaps, I'm not sure, out of Kansas, talked about the 30 million word gap. Children in poverty and children in the middle class and children in the upper class, meaning that the little kids who come from lower economic situation have 30 million fewer words than ones in the upper. Now, I don't think it's 30 million. To me, that sounds crazy, but the concept is correct in my view. And so, and I remember President Obama used to talk about the 30 million word gap actually. So I really believe that we have not done a good job of partnering with families in to help them become better. You know, they say that a parent is a child's first teacher. And I think we could do a much better job helping them be a better teacher so that when we start kindergarten, we don't have this huge gap that public school will never be able to fix because the gap only gets wider. I'm looking at myself and one hand is off the screen and one hand is on the screen. I don't know how to do that. But anyway, the gap gets wider really. You know, there's always exceptions, but so I think that's an issue for us. Anyway, but my part of all that schools are school. I don't like to say schools suck. I don't. I mean, I don't. But my part is how the special ed system is interfering. Really, is it's gotten too big, too large, convoluted, and not effective for the children it serves and for the other kids. So that's my little area of concentration.
Okay. Is there a plan somewhere?
Is there a plan? I wish there was. And you know, now we have COVID and learning so much about what's wrong with the system and perhaps what's right. Do you know which children have really benefited from being at home? Some kids with disabilities who have benefited. And I was just talking, I'm part of a group of educators and others who, you know, meet on Zoom to talk about what's actually happening. And have you heard of school phobia? The kids who don't want to go.
I suffered from it.
You did?
Oh yeah.
Well, you would have benefited from COVID because you would have been home with mom and dad or sisters or grandmother or caregiver, babysitter, I don't care who. And you would have had to deal with all those nasty kids in school and the teacher who looked at you, you know, not straight and whatever. So those kids apparently have done well. There's some other groups also. Some kids with autism have done better actually because there's less stimulation. They just, you know, can try to. So it's been a very interesting, and I hope a learning for us so we can actually improve things going forward. And I do have some ideas, obviously, on what we should do for special ed specifically. But
Well,
so
for me, every student is special.
well, that's true too. I mean, I think one of the smartest things that the special ed community did way back in the 60s, 50s, and 70s is to call it special ed because it seems to go against what you're saying, which I think all of us do believe. All children are special and unique and need and have needs, not only kids with disabilities. I think that's right. But that was a brilliant, talk about naming things and labeling things. That was brilliant.
Yeah. So as I've always, I've written a lot about education, but I'm an academic, but an educator who didn't study education. But I've always said that the school system is a jail, which kids have to go to, just because they turned 5 or 6.
Yeah.
And sometimes they have to wear a uniform, and it's like a jail where they get to go home at night. But
Well, yeah.
I
mean,
respect what you're saying. I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me now. Hey, we don't have to go to jail this year.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you have a more jaded view of public schools. I think all of us come to the question very much with our own story, our own life stories. And as I've already mentioned to you, my saga, going from one country to another. I mean, the schools in Holland were wonderful, really. Um, and I learned Dutch within 2 years, perfect Dutch. Um, the schools in New Jersey. I mean, I had a most wonderful public education experience that you could have. I grew up, small town, Flemington. It was just fantastic. Um, and my mother very much pushed education, like we didn't have to do chores at home. Oh, no, no chores because you got to go do your homework, that kind of thing. So I think it all depends on, um, I shouldn't say all, but a lot of it depends on your own life story and your experience with education. So for me, I would never call it a jail. I would call it a liberator, if you will. I mean, if it wasn't for the good schools in New Jersey, I don't know what I would have done, honestly. So
No, but I mean, but Miriam, it is a corrective institution.
it is. It is. That's true. Well,
And some people like, no, I mean, I loved high school. I didn't
yeah.
feel like I was in jail in high school.
Yeah, interesting.
But
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. I mean, for me, yeah, yeah, high school was kind of the best. Yeah, it was great.
it's all a
Yeah.
it's a very subjective thing.
Yes. Yeah. But
Um,
I do think now schools are very bound by federal requirements, all the testing we do, all the, benchmark stuff. We're not testing the right things. All the data collection we're collecting, we're not collecting the right data. It doesn't answer the question that the federal government thinks it's answering. Yeah, it is. It is way too complicated, way too big.
let me say something absurd, Miriam. I
I'm
think
sorry.
I'm going to say something absurd.
Okay.
I think that teachers, rather than gather data, should spend their time teaching. I would be happier if there were no exams, no data collection, and kids were allowed to proceed at their own rate and to do their own thing. And we had a little discourse. I'm against forcing kids to learn math.
What happened? I just lost you.
Well, I'm back.
Can you see me? Oh, yeah, there
I,
you are.
yeah, I
Well,
said, did you hear me?
yeah, now I'm back and now I see you and I hear you. It's good. Yeah. It's interesting. The schools so in thinking about special ed, actually, which is, I mean, let me back up. So the law was passed for children with severe and profound needs. 75. It was designed to serve up to 10% of our students. It now serves closer to 14 or 15%. But the problem is, I think it's a problem, that the severe and profound group of children make only about 10% or 10 or 20% of the population we serve under this law, whereas the mild and moderate disabled kids make up 80 or 90%. And most of them get into special ed because they did not learn to read in the elementary school, in the primary school. So
Exactly.
learning disability.
Language skills.
Exactly.
At the beginning, language,
Exactly.
able to express yourself, tell a story, read a story.
Right. Well, that's what I was talking about. The kids coming to school already behind. But anyway, so you have all these children with reading problems because it wasn't taught. So I think they have dysteachia, if you will, not dyslexia. And so when you're saying, let's just teach everyone, the models that I really look to are what's called competency-based education places, where they actually do that. They take a kid, they figure out where he or she is, either way ahead, way behind, right on grade level, whatever it is. They group their students. Yes, they do collect data. It can't really be done except with lots of data so that they can move the kids up and down as they are learning. So there's no such thing as a third grader, if you will. There's someone who is learning reading at a basic level or someone who is reading advanced material, if you know what I mean, and the same with math.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think that is the answer. And one of the guys in our little group of reformers works in one of those districts in Colorado, so it's been inspiring. But the other interesting thing about, and when you talk about records, one of the statistics that sticks in my mind always is you've got these special ed teachers all this data, writing all these reports, all these IEPs, and how much time do they actually have left for teaching?
Exactly.
Nothing. So one researcher from Kansas, it's always Kansas somehow, but anyway, Drescher said they have something like 27% of their time left for teaching.
Yeah.
73% of their time doing meetings, doing phone calls, doing writing reports, doing all this other stuff, but not with the kids. And we expect them to close these gaps. It's just nonsense, really.
So I asked Lord Jim Knight in the UK, who was head of education in the country, why they give so many exams, and he said it's because of universities, that it's demanded by universities so they can sift through the students. That's not a very good reason.
Yeah. The data is a real problem. What we're collecting, what we think we're collecting, it's just not helping us. It's a real problem. And, I was looking at another statistic. The whole thing is scary. Apparently, between 2000 and 2019, so recent, public schools hired something like almost 60% new administrators, almost 8% new teachers, 60% to run the system, and 8% to do the work of public schools, which is to teach. So, you look at that data and you think, what are we doing? We are creating a mess, and we are. It's too convoluted, too many rules, too many regulations, too much red tape, not enough teaching and learning for many kids.
So we're having here internet problems.
Oh, we are?
Well, because I don't see you very well.
Oh,
And I think we've discussed the main things that that there has to be reform, and I hope that you'll write underneath here. I wrote already your website where people can see the books that you're writing and the work you're doing.
yeah. I can see you. I can see you.
Yeah, but I just see your face and you're not going in any direction. And I don't know whether people are seeing you.
Yeah. Oh my
But
goodness.
it's been a wonderful discussion. Usually I close off the discussion with the Beatles.
Okay.
Do you like the Beatles?
I love the Beatles. Yes, I do.
A few words on the Beatles then from an educator.
Yes, definitely. I want to hold your hand.
That's your favorite song?
No, but that's the one that comes to mind.
Okay, because usually I ask people to sing the songs they love.
Oh, no, that's okay. That's all right. Although I was listening to Paul McCartney later singing a song from Guys and Dolls, which is beautiful. Or I Cannot Wish You. He
My
sings it
favorite
beautiful.
musical is Guys and Dolls.
Yeah, beautiful.
Oh,
Or I cannot
yeah.
wish you than to wish you find your love. That one, yeah.
Go ahead,
Beautiful.
sing. I love it.
No. Well, I'm not Paul McCartney, but it is a beautiful song, and he did it not as part of the Beatles. He did it much later.
Miriam, do you know this song?
Do I know it? Sort of, but not really.
So
Yeah.
please sing it. It's so lovely.
More I cannot wish you than to wish you find your love, your own true love. That's too high. Anyway, enough. No, I'm not going to sing. All right.
It's very beautiful. I use the Beatles to teach anything.
Oh, tell me about, oh, I can't ask you because it's your interview and
So
not
you can
mine.
ask me about the Beatles.
Okay, so how do you do that?
Well, I believe that you can teach anything with anything.
Well, I
I give,
agree with that. Yeah. And
I'm, yeah.
that's one of the problems with what we're doing because it's rigid. And so you have to teach it this way and it's very hard to, get to what you're saying that you can teach anything with the Beatles. But anyway,
I sometimes I teach with a banana. I really believe that you can teach anything with anything. Um,
yeah.
and yeah, I'm giving a talk on science and the Beatles on Thursday.
So
So,
how do you, like, what do you mean?
well, what do I mean? Many of the same skills that the Beatles had and acquired are the same skills that scientists have and acquire. Many of
Okay.
the questions that they asked are questions
Yeah.
that scientists asked. Um, so I'm going to give a talk comparing Watson and Crick in the 1950s and the discovery of the structure of DNA with the early Beatles.
Wow.
They have a
Okay,
lot
great.
in common. And listen, it's been great interviewing you. And
I'm sorry about the technology. I hope it wasn't my laptop.
well, it doesn't matter. We got to hear you, and
Okay. All
from
right.
from my
It was a
point,
lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
and you said things. I mean, I hope that President Biden listens to you,
I
because
hope so. I'm about to write them a letter. Yeah, a lot of us believe we're on the wrong track, and I think through COVID and all the changes, hopefully we can get on the right track and help all kids, and I really mean all children, um, and get rid of some of these labels. We didn't even talk about the labeling that goes on. Um, you have to fit into a box in order to be a child under this law, and you could be sitting next to a kid at the desk next to you who's equally troubled and having a hard time, but he doesn't get services. It's nuts, actually. Um, so, and it's great to see public schools doing the right thing, and I really do think competency-based teaching and learning is the way to go. So we'll see what happens. So I'm always optimistic that we will actually find a better way.
okay, and I also think that this COVID has caused a shakeup in
Yes.
all levels of education.
Yeah.
I think that we're still going to use this in coming years. I don't think we're just going to go back to classrooms.
No, I think not. I mean, I think for special ed, specifically, if I may, a lot of schools now are educating the most severely disabled kids in school because they really can't deal with the Zoom thingamajig. Others are getting very little. The mild to moderate, really, it's tragic, as is true for all kids. They're getting very little. And it's been my thought that we really need to radically look at who is in special ed, and perhaps the ones with mild or moderate really need just better teaching in the early grades, not special ed. They need good education more than they need special education because it hasn't really um, uh, gone the way it should. And all the rules and regulations and entitlements and rights, I do believe, are getting in the way. So I think this COVID has shown us how the community really is in two parts. And I'm hoping we will take that and break the law up so that we serve the kids who are really severely disabled under this law, and the others perhaps not, maybe with general ed doing a better job. So that's one of my hopes and one of my, I think it's actually, I think the crisis has shown that actually. So I find that, to tell you the truth,
One
even
of
though, even though on an individual basis, it's been tragic. I mean, it's tragic that kids are losing out. Absolutely, it's just horrible. But anyway, yeah.
I think that there's also another strange thing, and that is that kids have no trouble watching television for 5 hours or watching
Yeah.
the screen to play Minecraft and whatever.
Yeah.
And they get bored after 3 minutes of a class. So if we are able somehow to learn the secrets of television, then we can engage the kids
Yeah.
the same way that TV does, but for good purposes. So I
Yeah,
think
well,
that's one of the challenges that we have to rise to.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a good observation. That's really good. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Anyway, on that happy note, I'm going to thank you.
On that happy note, thank you.
It was wonderful meeting and talking to you, and I wish you well and have a wonderful day. And don't stop reforming education.
I'm working on it. Thank you very much. And this was really great.
Thank
And
you, Miriam. Dr.
Okay,
Miriam
bye-bye.
Freedman from the West
thank you.
Coast.
West
Thank
Coast,
you.
yes. Okay,
So
thank
that-
you.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.